Welcome to Dear Romance Writer, where three writers who always deliver happily ever afters offer questionable advice for all of your relationship, work, and life problems. Well, it's actually two romance writers today. I'm Roan Parrish.
And I'm Xio and Roan. Avery is still away because she doesn't like us anymore, but we're thrilled to welcome, sorry, Avery, we know we love you. We're thrilled to welcome the golden-throated voice actress extraordinaire, Andi Arndt, to our show. Welcome, Andi. Yay, cue crowd noise. Wow, we're so excited to have you here. Please tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Andi Arndt, and since about 2010, I've been narrating audiobooks. And I'm sitting here in my home studio in rural Michigan, where we moved in March. And in addition to my work as a narrator, I also founded a company called Lyric Audiobooks, which is now owned and executive produced by the fabulous Katie Robinson.
Yeah.
And I also founded a coaching site called narrator.life, which is the name and also the web address. So.
Oh, cool. Very cool. You're a busy lady.
Yep.
And I was just like, so I just looked you up on Audible because I know you've done like a bajillion books. How do you know how many audiobooks you actually?
It's over 600.
Oh.
Yeah,
since 2010.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
so impressive.
It's really impressive.
One word
wow,
at a
time. That's like what we do. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So wait, where I have to ask, because I grew up in Michigan. Where in rural Michigan?
Oh
yeah. Between Grand Rapids and Lake Michigan.
Oh yeah, sure. So I grew up in Ann Arbor. I was born in Baltimore, but moved there when I was 3. So I think of Michigan as like home. And just recently, my family and I took a trip like up to Lake Michigan on the coast, and I was just reminded of how beautiful it is up there.
Yeah, well, next time you're in the area, look me up and stop by.
Definitely, I will. That's awesome.
I've only ever been to Detroit in Michigan and Dearborn Heights, but I've heard like it's lovely up there. But yeah,
it's so beautiful, and the vibe is so different. Like for me, Ann Arbor and Detroit are like about 40 minutes apart, and so Detroit was where I always went as a kid from Ann Arbor, like college town to city. There wasn't a thing in Ann Arbor, like concerts and dance halls and that kind of thing. I don't know why I said dance halls. Like I grew up in the 1920s or something.
You went to like
industrial club. But yeah, I love Detroit. But yeah, the like northern Michigan. But before you get to like up north, which there's a lot of discussion and opinions about what counts as up north, is a really different, very different. So beautiful.
Yeah. Well, we're excited to have you here, Andi. Welcome. Before we get to our letter today, which Ron has a really good one, we have a follow-up from one of our listeners. And this was from the episode where we had Tessa Bailey with us. So M wrote back and said, "Hi, I just wanted to say thank you. I was really nervous sending my letter a few months ago, but when I listened to the episode you did, it was called The Bedroom Anxiety with Tessa Bailey. You were all so kind and respectful and full of good ideas. So thanks. My husband and I are working on it, and we're going to try some couples therapy too. I really appreciate the time you took." Oh,
thank you so much for writing back to us.
Yes, thank you. And we're really excited for you guys. It's amazing when we get to talk to people who are listening to us, like we love trolling Am I the Asshole or whatever, but the people who write to us, who listen to us, are the ones that mean the most. So you guys don't be afraid to send us your letters, send us your comments, your questions. If you have any issues you want to bring up, something you overheard from your neighbors next door, we don't mind. You can slide into our DMs or email us or fill out our anonymous form on our website. We just love hearing from you guys. So good luck, Em, and keep us posted.
Oh, I have to show you this video because today is actually our Halloween episode, and I am wearing this orange sweatshirt of Timmy's with a black cat on it, but now I have Jasper, this white cat, and it looks like I'm holding 2 cats, but one is on
does.
For those who are not listening.
They're snuggling with each other.
Oh, wait, it is the Halloween episode. I need to get something Halloween-y. Hang on. I'll bring down Bob. This is Bob.
There you go. Nice.
Bob has a rose in his mouth. I don't know if you guys have read Jim Butcher's Dresden Files, but Bob is a spirit that lives in the skull.
Love it.
I do have something about 10 feet from my booth that would be sort of Halloweenish, but I don't want to interrupt this to go get it. So.
Oh my gosh, feel free if you want to.
Yeah, feel free. We're totally
Okay, I'll be right back.
I have to dust. I'm gonna dust Bob because Bob is dusty. He's been sitting on top of my bookcase for a minute. This was actually hand painted by a friend of mine in Vancouver. Yeah, it's really cool. If you guys are on YouTube, you can see all of the lovely Celtic artwork on here.
Is it paper mache? What's it made of?
No, ceramic.
Oh,
can you hear that?
Dang, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I changed my mind because this building where it's an outbuilding in this new property, and the previous owner used it for her ceramic studio. It's really cool. It's got good energy. And it had one of those owls with the bobbling head that's used to scare birds away so they won't fly in and roost in the rafters. And so I picked it up, and a little bit of either mud wasp or some other kind of nest material fell out, and I was like, we're not having bugs in the booth. No.
No.
So,
no.
I left it out there.
That's wise, but it's here in spirit. The owl is here in spirit. Yes. I have this fantasy that so in these windows behind me, for those of you who are not on YouTube, I'm recording from my girlfriend's parents' cabin in rural Pennsylvania, which we have come up to for this month-long art retreat, which is the most fun ever. But so behind me, there's this whole wall of windows, and behind me, there are all these birds that always come. And I have this fantasy that halfway through this episode, just a murder of crows will fly by, or an owl, or something super spooky. So, if it happens, don't worry, I will interrupt everything to let everybody know. Okay, so today is our Halloween episode, which means that, it's some shit about Halloween, because both Xio, I don't know about you, Andi, but both Xio and I are ride or die Halloween fans. And I think we just are happy to chat anytime about it. Yes, as you can see from Xio stroking her skull.
I'm just gonna stroke the skull. Yep. Bob and I are having a moment.
It's giving what's the Bond villain that strokes cat vibes?
Oh yeah. I always think of Austin Powers when I think of that, because I know it's from a Bond thing, but yeah.
True.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm gonna read today's letter, which is extremely Halloween, Halloween adjacent. And I'm very curious to hear all of your thoughts about it. So this comes from Am I the Asshole? And it goes like this. I live in a large neighborhood, about 90 houses. We are what's considered the rich neighborhood. So our neighborhood has always been a hotspot for trick-or-treaters. We used to get about 700 to 1,000 kids a year. Dang.
Wow.
I've always loved getting trick-or-treaters because my kids are teens now and don't trick-or-treat anymore. But in the last few years, it's gotten ridiculous. There's thousands of kids and their parents flooding the streets. People with hay in their rigs carrying kids around, trampling yards, littering candy wrappers everywhere. And the amount of small children walking around by themselves is appalling, all caps. People from the neighboring town of 30,000 people take their kids to my neighborhood. I was annoyed, but I never really did anything about it until 2 years ago. My daughter tripped and broke her arm. We didn't think it was a break, but we wanted to go to the ER anyway to get it checked out. And there were so many people in our neighborhood, we couldn't get out. There were cars everywhere, lining the streets, parked in people's yards. It was horrible. We had to wait until everyone left about 1 a.m. to go to the hospital. My daughter had to wait in pain for hours. At that point, I was done. I contacted the neighborhood community, and we managed to get some folks, cops mostly, to stand at the gate with a list and only let in certain people, folks that live here, family members, friends. If you wanted to get in, you had to be close to someone in the neighborhood. It was great. There were only about 300 kids in the neighborhood, and after there was barely any trash, and we're doing it again this year. I recently told my sister what I'd done, and she got really angry. When we were kids, we had to trick or treat in other neighborhoods because we lived in a trailer park with no other kids. She told me I was a horrible person for ruining thousands of kids' Halloween. But honestly, I'm not too broken up about it. It was a hazard. If there was a fire or an emergency, no one would have been able to get in to help. When I was a kid, there were never any cars lining the streets. The residents could get out if they wanted. It was never dangerous. I don't think I'm in the wrong, but I've always respected my sister's opinion. Am I the asshole? Edited to add, there was no one in the cars. They were parked in the middle of the road and in yards, so there was no way for me or an ambulance to get through unless every driver in that neighborhood at the same time went to their cars and drove out. My daughter was 13 and in that awkward phase where she doesn't want to bother anyone for help and said it didn't hurt that bad.
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Ooh, okay.
Oh, pop it.
So that's the letter. What do we think?
I mean,
an asshole.
My first thought is that there has to be some like medium between shutting it down to everyone except for people you know and letting in 10,000 people. Like there has to be like maybe have a limit, higher security, and have a limit to the number of people. So if, 50 people come in and then they go out, or whatever, 300 people go in, and then you sort of like rotate it that way. But like shutting it down absolutely completely, I think is kind of harsh, although I do understand why she's upset. I mean, that's insane. Just without the broken arm, the trash and the tearing up people's lawns and all that stuff is pretty, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Well, I lived in a neighborhood like that where it was the old town, it was called Old Town in this college town. And so people who lived in an area like where we moved to, where there's a great distance between the houses, would drive their kids into town. And so they could enjoy trick-or-treating on one of those. It was like cinematic, tree canopy, sidewalks, front porches. Our neighbors would have like chili, and everybody would gather at their house and have chili and cornbread and stuff before and like make the kids eat some actual food before they overdosed on sugar. But we usually had to buy like over 1,000 pieces of candy, and still we'd always think, okay, this year we have enough candy, and we'd still have to turn our light off at like 8.
Wow.
It was insane. But I could see where if it got much more busy than that, where you really do start to worry, you definitely wouldn't want to go in or out of the neighborhood because you wouldn't want to run a kid over either, because the kids are running across the street.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, settle in for the night. So yeah, I agree with you, Zio. Like there should be a happy medium. There should be a way to have some hospitality for kids who need access to a cool trick-or-treating neighborhood, but some order for everybody's safety too. So
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think like there's 2 different questions for me, and question 1 is, am I an asshole? And question 2 is like, should I do something? And I feel very clear that you are an asshole for this. Like, I think that anytime your first response to having a lot of people in your own space, if they don't have access to something that you have, if your first response is to call the cops and have a list at the door that only like the exclusive people can get in, I think you are an asshole. And I think that that's like something you should deal with in your personal life and figure out why it is that you, someone who grew up in a trailer park without precisely the resources that you are denying to other people, have decided that now that you've like quote unquote made it, you want to be in the position of gatekeeper instead of in the position of like creating something beautiful for children that you would have loved to have when you were a kid. Like go to therapy, do that work. Clearly something is going on with you and it seems pretty obvious what it is, but I hope you change. But then in terms of like, I mean, I don't know this person, I'm gonna just be honest.
Yeah.
But then in terms of like what to do, I do agree that like you need to do something if it's an actual safety hazard. And the fact that your daughter happened to break her arm on Halloween and then the cars that were there, like you couldn't get out, that is clearly what like was the breaking point to you. And that's legit. I mean, of course, if your child is injured and you are physically incapable of getting out of your neighborhood, that's a huge problem. Also though, like, what is the likelihood that something like that is going to happen again on Halloween? Like, I don't think you need to get everyone out. You just need to have designated places for people to park and like clear avenues. And I think that like you can do that without cops. You can do that with you and your neighbors, just like being pretty clear about where people are allowed to park, maybe some signs, maybe you want to get together like a neighborhood. I mean, I think my suggestion to this person, like practical suggestion going forward, would be that like sometime in late summer or early fall next year, you and your neighbors, whoever wants to be on this committee, should have a Halloween committee. And you just need like maybe 3 or 4 families, like maybe people from different spots in the neighborhood who can like volunteer to put up a sign at the beginning of the house, like the gates or whatever, if this is like a gated community, put up some signs. Then like if you have 2-parent households, like one of the parents can be taking the kids for trick-or-treating, one of the parents can be at the door. And when the kids come up with parents, like you can just say, hey, at such and such a clock, that's when all the cars need to be out, just so you know. And it's so easy because like then people are going to be like, they don't want their car to get towed. They don't want the cops called on them. If you just say like, this is the time at which the street closes, I think that you would have really good luck, and you can have signs to tell the cars where to park. Like, to me, if people are coming and driving and parking in the middle of the street and on people's lawns without permission, that is so out. Like, that's weird. That's an extreme behavior that that like I can't even imagine. I don't know.
Oh, I've seen it. I've seen it in Jersey.
But I can't imagine who these people are who are like not worried about getting the cops called on them for parking in someone's front lawn. Like, who are these people? But yeah, I feel like
if you're in the front lawn, you've gone over a sidewalk or over an area where kids might be walking. So that's not cool.
Yeah.
But we lived in a neighborhood where the Christmas parade parking was up our street. The New Year's fireworks parking was up our street. The 4th of July downtown festival was up our street. We loved being able to walk to all that stuff. And we loved the feeling of like festive, festivity. And we loved living in a fun Halloween neighborhood. So but it didn't get to that point. And before we moved, we had, I don't know how many years of like National Geographic magazines. And so I grabbed a whole box of them and put them out next to me while I was giving out candy. And if a kid said, there were so many kids who were like, can I have a book? And sure. So like, and their parents were taking them. So we got rid of all the National Geographics.
That's awesome.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. I think I'd go for the National Geographic over the candy.
Right.
Well, Xio, it reminds me of your neighborhood too, where like you and your neighbors set something up so that kids could be trick-or-treating outside. And I wonder if, because of the pandemic, and I wonder if maybe a good thing to do also, instead of like having the kids come up to each individual person's house, is you could just have like huge long tables where the kids trick or treat, and it could just be like 3 or 4 houses per table, and they're like lining the street. And that way it doesn't have to be like, I don't know, going up to each house. I feel like that adds to the amount of time that each individual car is there. And it adds to like the creepy factor. If you're a parent, is like, you don't want your kid to go up by themselves up to like some stranger's door, maybe. But if it was just like tables and everything, and it was supervised and there were people around, then like you really could drop your kid at the start of the street and be like, cool, come back in half an hour when you've gone up the streets. I don't know. In Philly, I feel like that's, in West Philly anyway, that's like the way trick-or-treating, the like parades and stuff, that's how it's done, is like people, they do go to individual houses sometimes, but there are just like these long tables outside, the kind of like lunchroom tables, and there's baskets of candy, and like people come and get them. And then at the end of the street, there's like a big celebration with like cupcakes and all that stuff. And it's on a residential street, and they close it to traffic. So, I mean, that's another thing that you could consider if you're going to get like, I mean, I don't know that you need the cops involved per se, probably just a permit from the city, but you could actually close the street to traffic.
Close the street. That's what I was thinking. And then people would have to park, but then people would be forced to park elsewhere. And then the people outside of I mean, there has to be a way to like sit down with the parents, or at least put out a thing saying, okay, things are changing this year because it's getting too big. I mean, that's all they have to say, is that it's getting too big. Like letting it get to this point, I'm sure that there was a period where that tipping point happened and nobody did anything. Like she said, 2 years ago, she didn't do anything until something happened to her daughter. But like, I've been to areas where, like in New Jersey, where there's like the more affluent areas, and people bus in from the other areas to go trick-or-treating, and it's very orderly usually. Where I live, it gets a little interesting sometimes. We're between 2 areas that are known for their trick-or-treating, for their Halloween celebrations, and they have like every house is decorated with like huge things, and there's lights and all kinds of stuff, and the kids know to go there, these 2 areas. And then our space in between, like the first year we moved here, we had all this candy and nobody came to the door because like
it's such a bummer when that happens.
People were walking by. I'm like, do you want some candy? Here's a whole bag of like 96 pieces of Snickers. It was you know, and now they stop because there's like, you know, half the block is now giving out candy. But yeah, they come from everywhere. People like just zoom up in their cars. The kids jump out, grab the candy, get back in the car, and go to the next area they know that has candy.
Have you seen that? Have you seen that cartoon that like the Grim Reaper comes to that lady's door and he's like, "I'm here to take your eternal oh, full-size Snickers? Oh wow, never mind."
No, that's cute.
That's awesome. He's like, "You'd have another year. Give me that Snickers."
I know. All the kids know the houses that give out full-size candy bars.
Right.
Yeah, well, I just think that's such a like, clearly there are a lot of solutions that this person could do that don't have anything to do with like calling the cops and turning children away from the best holiday in the whole world. Like, I like that if this were anything else, I wouldn't care. I would be like, kids, life is suffering, whatever. But it's Halloween, and I'm like, no, the babies need
the babies need their candy. Be able to dress up and knock on your door.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious who these other people are on the committee or whatever committee, because I mean, obviously she couldn't by herself, I wouldn't think, be like, okay, we're closing it off. So who are the other people that were on this committee? They were like, yes, let's close it off and only let the people in that we want to be here. That's
I like, also she says in the last 4 years, I'm like, cool, that's also the pandemic. So like, what's happening is that people who can't go to like indoor events or parties or other Halloween things because of a global pandemic are doing outdoor activities and going trick-or-treating. And like, if what you've decided is that because there's a global pandemic and you live in a rich neighborhood, you would like to protect yourself and like send all the children Hunger Games style out to get stopped by the cops and like turned away, because come on, of course you're a fucking asshole. You are an asshole. Like, definitely 100%.
Listen to your sister.
God,
find another solution that actually works and is, I mean, to go from how many kids? What was it? Thousands
to like thousands
to 300. I mean, that's All right, so since we're talking about like what we do in our neighborhoods, do you guys have any Halloween traditions? Do you celebrate every year? Was it like, I know you do, Roan.
I know, I'm like
So I mean, now my daughters are in college, so I only know like what they're doing for Halloween by what comes in the Amazon, you know, oh, she's going to be that this year. Because they're still on my Prime account for the free shipping. And we have this widow's watch in our house because it's a really old house. And I had this idea this year of getting some LED colored lights and doing something with like a witch or a ghost or something up there and light it and do, you know, like, you know, the old movies where somebody would get something going with a turntable, you know, to make it keep moving around.
A little Ouija,
yeah. But then it turns out that we're actually getting back from a trip late on Halloween night. So it's going to have to be next year if it's anything. I like going to Halloween parties, and I have been known to come up with, you know, usually funny costumes or like costumes that are some kind of visual joke in a way.
Like
can we get some examples here?
Okay, a long time ago, I was like, what Britney Spears might look like at like age 50, and it was when she was still, like, it was like 15 years ago when she was still, you know. So I got like tattoo sleeve bodysuit thing, and I didn't need to pack on any extra midriff stuff because I already brought my own. You know, and just, I don't remember what else I did, but it was sort of like has been Britney Spears looking scary. And then I got one year I got some face decals that were like Day of the Dead stick on candy skull. That was fun. People did not recognize me, so I did my entire face with the skull stuff, and I got a black hat with a skull like ribbon on it. People did not recognize me.
That's amazing.
That's very cool. Wow.
See, and the Britney Spears thing didn't age very well because
she's been through so much.
I know.
Amazing. Well,
do you dress up for Halloween, Ron? Or do you just dress the house up for Halloween?
You know, it's so interesting. Like the costume part is the one part that I don't care about for myself. I love seeing other people's costumes, but for some reason I just never like I love before the pandemic, I used to have a big Halloween party every year. It's like the only party I threw because I don't like parties. And I would cook for days. I would have like 3 days and I would do like these elaborate foods like a phyllo veggie wrap that was made to look like intestines. So it was like mushrooms wrapped in the phyllo, and then like you cut it and ketchup oozes out, and like, yeah, some gross stuff, but also cute, like just cupcakes that look like gravestones and dip that is a cemetery and just all that kind of stuff. And I would decorate the house, and I really, really enjoyed that. And then everyone would come in costume and I would be like, oh shit, I forgot a costume for another year. But yeah, so that's really fun. But when I was a kid, I loved the dressing up part because I didn't have any control over anything else. And so in Ann Arbor, where I grew up, like my neighborhood was a kind of sort of like near North Campus, lots of just like younger families, kind of wide streets. So there was a ton of trick-or-treating in my neighborhood. And I went alone from the time I was probably like 6 or 7 because it was quite safe. And I just remember like each year there being a different pack of kids that I would run with on Halloween. And like, it was exciting every year for the, you know, for like to get home from school and you start getting dressed up and then, you know, you're going to go trick or treating. And when I was younger, I would go and then like be home by, I don't know, 9 or whatever it was, because that's when the big kids trick-or-treated. And by big kids, I meant like the teenagers who wore scary masks. And I would like get so excited to come home and be the one to give them their candy because I was like scared, but titillated. So like too scared to be outside and like see them, but in my home with my parents behind me, like I really wanted to see what the big kids were wearing. It was the whole thing. Really, I got into it super hard.
That's cool.
Oh yeah, and I showed you my for anyone who is watching.
That is super cute.
Timmy's sweatshirt that I stole for this episode, but also I might never get
it. It's yours now. Now, I used to like trick-or-treating and Halloween in general was sort of taboo in my family when I was growing up. I did go to a Halloween party at like a school. I think it must have been like 5th or 6th grade, and I was invited to a party by like one of the more affluent kids in my school, and so my grandma was like, "You're going." And my costume, and Andi, this won't make any sense to you, but it was a mummer's costume.
No, I know what the mummers
are. Oh, yeah, the mummers are? Okay, yeah. So we have like, there's a mummers museum here now, but back then there was like I mean, they may have been there then, but there was like a shop that sold like used mummers gear. And so I had this like completely inappropriate sort of, I think it was a tie. It was like a gold lame suit with like a tie headdress that was super, super tall. And she put like a long black ponytail on me or whatever. And it was completely inappropriate. But like, I was like the hit of the party because I had this mummer's costume. You know, I was like 10 years old or something like that. And the headdress was so freaking heavy. And then I remember taking my sister trick-or-treating when my dad lived in Jersey. And that neighborhood was one of the ones that people went to. So like people would drive to, and there was one family that was like a corner house. They had sort of a big corner yard. They would put out the whole like barrel with the apples in it. So people would bob for apples. And then like inside their house, they had like a whole station of real food, you know, like
anyone could go in.
And things like, and anyone could go in. They were from the South. They were so I can't remember their last name, but she, you know, she talked like this and come on in, y'all, you know, that whole thing. It was so sweet. And my sister was always like a butterfly or a princess or something like that. But when I got older, I used to collect costumes from the theaters that I worked in. And so like I started having this party called the Fools and Asses Gala. And you could come dressed as a fool or an ass, and it was completely open to interpretation. So you had people coming as actors, you had people coming as politicians, people coming as people they knew, you know, and stuff. And it was like you had to guess who they were. And the costumes got so elaborate. But I was almost always a vampire. I still am almost always a vampire. But a couple of years ago, I did go as Claire Fraser from Outlander.
Ooh.
And I got like the whole, I got the whole like tartan and the corset and the whole thing. So yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. This year we're staying at the cabin through Halloween, and we're doing all sorts of fun, like autumn stuff, but obviously not really doing like a Halloween thing on Halloween, but Timmy had the best idea for a costume. So we're having trouble with the fireplace because the flue is acting wonky. And so we got these Duraflame logs because they burn cleaner and then we can like keep the fire going. And she suggested that I should be the log lady, only with the Duraflame log from Twin Peaks, only with the Duraflame log. So I'm like the Duraflame log lady. And well, all I need is to wander around with the Duraflame log. So I think I'm going to do it.
Oh, do it. Do it. Last year I was more of a shit.
Oh, that's amazing. Wait, I'm sorry. Do you have pictures?
I'll have to find a picture for you because it was accidental. I was like, yeah, I'll just go. It was like a weird vampire thing. And I had this wig and I threw the wig and I was like, oh my God, I look like more, like more shit. So that's what it was last year. Yeah, it was fun.
Love it.
To see what I'm going to do this year.
Yeah. I'm curious if there are any like writerly and or audiobookly Halloween things that are going to happen, like digital parties or online things. Or I feel like people are super creative, and I'm such a last minute Larry that I'm like, it would be so cool to do something for Halloween, and it's like October 29th and there's not time to do anything.
We should live tweet something. Live tweet some like horror movie or Rocky Horror or something.
We should.
By the way, if you hear all kinds of construction noise, it's because the roofers are here.
Ooh. Congratulations / condolences.
Well, it's a perfect time to do a Zoom discussion because I can't record an audiobook right now either.
Yeah. Have you recorded any horror or Halloween-y or ghosty things?
I did a book by Rin Chupeco.
Oh, really? Amazing.
And I do remember there was this incredible description of like a specter that when it was startled or discovered, it like flew up to the ceiling, like whoosh, like all of a sudden, and it was like hanging from the ceiling. The story had to do with people who had committed serious wrongs, murder, whatever, being scared to death as their karma.
Oh, like literally scared to death.
Yes.
Wow.
I like that.
And you're sitting there going, and they deserved it. So yeah, I haven't done as much. I did a hilarious Christmas horror publishing industry parody last year called Secret Santa.
Ooh, I'm gonna look that up.
Oh my gosh, It is so hilarious. It's this woman who works at a literary agency or like a small publishing house that's in a row house, in an old fusty row house. And they start doing Secret Santa and things start to happen.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Your own face.
You're
speaking your love language.
I loved it. They had every kind of character that if you've ever worked in any kind of office, there's, it's that guy. Oh, it's that lady. Plus so cool. it was like typeset like an old Stephen King.
Oh, nice.
Wow. So it even looked kind of retro. So it was fun. That was super fun.
Awesome.
This not trend, but there's like a few people who've done these retro style covers, like the illustrated retro style covers. I love them. Absolutely love them.
I know.
Like I want to do something just so I can have a cover like that.
Same. It's so wild too, because I'm thinking about when I was like a kid and I would look at things like that clearly were, or I can now see clearly were referential of an earlier time period. But as a kid, like anything more than 20 years old kind of blends together. So like that were done in the 80s but made to look like the 60s. I just thought that's how things were. And I'm now, so every time I see these, yes. Oh, I love it. I love that cover too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's backwards, but yeah.
No, I love it. But yeah, now every time there are these like retro 80s things in the 2020s, I'm like, I wonder if people are going to look at this and be like, oh, this is a new thing, and not like 20 years from now and not know that it was referential. But
it's definitely happening. I saw something, I think it was last summer, these kids were posting these selfies, or like it was some models that I follow, and they were posting these selfies and they were like, this is so 80s, and it was definitely 70s. And I was like, it's really not 80s
Oh,
at all. I was like, oh, you poor babies. You don't know the difference.
But Dave, that's like 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, 70s aesthetic to me is like the bell bottoms and the polyester and the wide collars and all that stuff. And 80s is like neon and parachute pants. And they were wearing like the polyester, like the hair flip and all that stuff. And I was like, that's not 80s at all. But they were 12. So
my friend and I were in a charity shop in Edinburgh, Scotland, and that's where the Fringe Festival is. So there's amazing charity shops that have all these like costume potential type clothing.
Oh wow.
And she and I were just dying because there were some college age people looking through clothes a few racks over from us, and we're chortling because we heard this voice. I'm waiting to use this voice. We heard this voice say, "Oh my God, this is so 50s or like 60s or 70s or like."
That's amazing.
And we're like, that's a wide
range
span of time that you're talking about there. So,
oh my gosh.
Bless their hearts, though. I mean, I feel like this would be me talking about like the 18th century or something.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
So 1840s or maybe 50s or 1860s. I don't know.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Well, friends, I have enjoyed chatting with you about Halloween so very much.
Yeah.
Andi, thank you so much for being here with us and celebrating Halloween. Will you tell everyone listening where they can find you and any like projects you have coming up that people should be aware of?
Well, you can find me. I'm most active on Twitter and on Instagram. I tried TikTok. I left. I don't hang out on Facebook as much as I used to. So those two things are where to find me. I have a full recording schedule, so just stalk the Audible new releases. I'm recording
like a book a day.
I'm recording a Jill Shalvis book this week called The Backup Plan, and that's for Harper. And it's actually a double romance storyline in one, so I'm marveling at the mastery of the form.
Oh, wow.
And next year, you can catch me at Rare Melbourne. I'm going to Australia.
Oh, fun. Wait, isn't Avery going there?
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, Avery's going to be there. So she's not here today, but we'll get to meet her.
Good, great. Yeah, and thanks for having me on. This has been fun.
Absolutely. A delight. We loved having you. And thank you, everyone listening, for hanging out with us for another episode of Dear Romance Writer. Remember, send us your questions, your friends' questions, your secret convictions about your friends that you would never admit to them. I don't know.
Secret crushes. I want to know some secret crushes. Anonymous secret crushes. That's a challenge to you, listeners.
Yes, I want secret crushes. And I also want secret crushes on like oh God, now I'm blanking on the parasocial crushes where it's like crushes on internet people.
Yes.
I want to know. I want the dirt. I don't know. I just like kind of want to know all your deepest, darkest secrets, basically. So you should just send us letters and or art, pictures, gifts. I don't know.
Gifts, that'd be awesome.
Gifts. Send your gift.
Secret crush in GIF form.
Send us your stuff. You can go to dearromancewriter.com. We have a form you can fill out that's completely anonymous, or you can email us at advice@dearromancewriter.com.
I always get the address wrong.
I always get
slide into our DMs.
Just chat with us. Tell us all the things, because we would love to hear from you. And we cannot wait to give you some more questionable advice from these happily ever after enthusiasts. Have a good one, y'all.
See you later.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for subscribing to Dear Romance Writer. Remember to keep sending in those letters at dearromancewriter.com. We can't wait to tell you what to do. Dear Romance Writer is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love, frolic.media/podcasts.